Imagine a Thanksgiving where children dressed in rags roamed the streets asking for treats, or a time when the day was marked by formal masquerade balls. The holiday we celebrate today, with turkey, football, and family gatherings, has evolved significantly over the years. Here are 10 Thanksgiving Day traditions from the past that were once popular but are no longer common today. Starting in the 1870s, children would dress as ragamuffins, wearing ragged clothing and masks to go door to door asking, "Anything for Thanksgiving?" In return, they received pennies, candies, or fruit. The practice was so widespread that candy makers and mask producers considered Thanksgiving their busiest season. However, the tradition had a mischievous side. Those who didn't provide a treat might get hit with a flour sack or have a loud horn blown in their face. This rowdiness eventually led to public disapproval. By the 1930s, civic groups began organizing alternative events, and publications like the New York Times called for an end to the annoying practice. The rise of organized events like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and the growing popularity of Halloween for trick-or-treating ultimately led to the decline of ragamuffins. The tradition of dressing up on Thanksgiving wasn't just for children. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, adults in many parts of the country participated in Thanksgiving masquerades. People of all ages would wear elaborate costumes and masks, parading through the streets in a manner more reminiscent of today's Mardi Gras. In 1899, one New York newspaper noted people dressed as Fausts, Filipinos, Mephistos, Boers, Uncle Sams, John Bulls, Harlequins, bandits, and sailors. For the upper classes, the evening often culminated in formal masquerade balls, a tradition borrowed from European carnival celebrations. While such parties were popular, masked events were sometimes viewed with suspicion, as the anonymity was thought to encourage improper behavior. In rural America, Thanksgiving morning was often a time for communities to gather for shooting matches. This tradition, particularly strong in New England, involved men showcasing their marksmanship, with the prize being the turkey or goose for the holiday feast. A live turkey was sometimes tied to a post or placed behind a barrier with only its head and neck exposed as the target. Contestants paid a fee for each shot, and whoever managed to hit the moving target won the bird. Considering the inaccuracy of firearms of the day and the distance, usually around 300 feet, it was a challenge of both skill and luck. Over time, animal welfare concerns led to changes in the practice, and many shoots began using paper targets instead. The night before Thanksgiving was once a time for boisterous and sometimes destructive youthful antics. In many communities, Thanksgiving Eve was an occasion for pranks and revelry, often involving college and fraternity students. These activities could range from harmless fun like disassembling a wagon and reassembling it on a barn roof, to more disruptive behavior that bordered on vandalism. This informal mischief night was a way for young people to blow off steam before the more formal celebration of the next day. As the 20th century progressed, however, the holiday became more firmly centered on the nuclear family. The day before Thanksgiving, known as Blackout Wednesday, is still considered the biggest drinking night of the year in many parts of the U.S. The modern Thanksgiving menu of turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie is a relatively recent invention. Historical accounts of the 1621 harvest feast between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people suggest a very different spread. Venison, or deer, was a main course, as the Wampanoag brought 5 deer to the feast. Wild fowl, likely ducks and geese, were on the menu, but it's not certain if turkey was the star of the show. Seafood, such as eels, lobster, clams, and mussels, would have also been plentiful. Many staples of the modern table were absent. Potatoes were not yet a common food in the region, and without wheat flour or refined sugar, there were no bread-based stuffings or sweet pumpkin pies as we know them. Pumpkin was likely served, but it might have been stewed or roasted. While we now associate Thanksgiving with massive spectacles like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, these are a relatively modern tradition. The first Macy's Parade was held in 1924 and was originally called a Christmas Parade to kick off the holiday shopping season. Before these large, commercially sponsored parades became a national institution, local communities held their own smaller parades, sometimes as a way to control the earlier Ragamuffin activities. The first Macy's parades featured employees in costume and, famously, live animals from the Central Park Zoo, including elephants, bears, and tigers. The animals were replaced with giant balloons in 1927 after they reportedly frightened some children. The nationally televised showing of giant balloons and elaborate floats is a 20th century evolution of the holiday. While many people still express gratitude on Thanksgiving, the tradition of attending a formal church service on Thanksgiving Day has become less common. Historically, Thanksgiving was a religious observance rooted in Puritan traditions of giving thanks to God for a bountiful harvest or deliverance from hardship. Churches would hold special services on Thanksgiving morning, and these were a central part of the day's activities for many families. The very first national Thanksgiving proclamations, issued by figures like George Washington in 1789 and Abraham Lincoln in 1863, framed the day explicitly as one for public thanksgiving and prayer. While some churches still offer Thanksgiving services, the holiday has become largely secular for a significant portion of the population. For much of the 20th century, a common tradition in American elementary schools was the Thanksgiving pageant. Children would dress up as pilgrims and Native Americans to reenact a simplified and often inaccurate version of the 1621 harvest feast. These pageants, which became widespread in the early 1900s, were intended to teach a patriotic story of cooperation and the founding of the nation. In recent decades, however, there has been a growing awareness of the historical inaccuracies and the harmful stereotypes these pageants can perpetuate. As a result, many schools have moved away from these traditional pageants in favor of more historically accurate and culturally sensitive ways of teaching about the origins of the holiday. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, it was common for people to send Thanksgiving postcards to friends and family. These cards, first appearing in the 1880s, often featured festive illustrations of turkeys, pilgrims, and harvest scenes, much like Christmas cards today. This tradition was part of a larger postcard craze in the early 1900s, when sending and collecting postcards was an immensely popular and affordable way to communicate. The artwork on these cards ranged from serene and religious to humorous, with some depicting turkeys driving cars or engaging in other human-like activities. This tradition was a way to send holiday greetings and stay in touch with loved ones who were far away. While charitable activities still occur around Thanksgiving, the holiday was once more directly associated with community-based acts of giving. In the 19th century, organizations and individuals made a concerted effort to provide for the less fortunate on Thanksgiving Day itself. This included collecting and distributing Thanksgiving baskets with all the food needed for a holiday meal and hosting large-scale sit-down dinners for those in need. These were not quiet acts, but public, celebrated events that reinforced community bonds and the holiday's theme of gratitude. While food drives and volunteering are still popular, the direct, community-wide focus on charity as a primary Thanksgiving activity has diminished for many. So, if you could bring back one of these bygone Thanksgiving traditions, what would it be? Drop a comment down below to tell us your favorite.